Hello friends, welcome to my channel. Today we are going to discuss about the cross pollination. In this topic, we are going to discuss about the introduction of cross pollination, definition of the cross pollination, advantages, disadvantages, and contributions to achieve the cross pollination. So first, we start from introduction of pollination. In last video, we have studied about pollination. So pollination, it is one of the most important process to produce the next generations of the plants. So when we consider the pollination or the definition of the pollination, so it is the process in which there is a transfer of pollen grains from anthers towards the stigma. So here the pollination, it is going to divide into two main types, that is self-pollination and cross-pollination. In last video, we have discussed in detail about self-pollination. Today, we are going to discuss about the cross-pollination. So first we see the definition of the cross-pollination. So what is the cross-pollination? Cross-pollination means it is the transfer of pollen grain from flower of one plant to the stigma of flower of the another plant. Means here in a cross pollination there is involvement of two plants in which the anthers of one flower, they get transferred towards the stigma of flower of the another plant. So this process we called it as an cross pollination. So just consider here this cross pollination can take place with the help of different types of agencies. So that agencies we will going to discuss in the next video. But for today's, just see what is cross pollination. So if we take these two flowers which are belonging to two different plants, so here whenever there is a transfer of pollen grain from this flower to the stigma of another flower, but that another flower, it is present on the other plant or the another plant. This process we call as an cross pollination. So just we see what are the advantages of cross pollination. So see that here the seeds are more, they are produced in more in number and they are viable one. Then due to the cross pollination the progenies become healthier. So in self pollination we have discussed that whatever the progenies which are going to be produced in next generation, they does not maintain their health, or this self pollination is going to carried out just to maintain uh, the genetic sequence or whatever the type of parents the progenies are produced. But here in the cross pollination, due to the cross pollination there is exchange of characters in between two plants. That's why the progenies become more healthier, as well as the production rate or the fertility rate, it is also higher one. Then the adaptability in the plants which are going to carry out the cross pollination, it is very better. And this cross pollination is going to be helpful to produce the new varieties of the plant. So all of we well known about the plant breeding. So in various plant breeding experiments the cross pollination is going to be carried out, even though the plant is bisexual one. So at that time there is emasculation can take place, and whatever our interested anthers or the plants which is going to carry our useful characters, that anthers we are going to spread on the stigma of the another plant. So in this way the plant breeding experiments are going to carried out to produce the new varieties, new hybrids, and lots of the new varieties they are going to produce by using only the process of cross pollination. Then next we see what are the disadvantages of cross pollination. In advantages we can see that as compared to the self pollination, the cross pollination is very better to produce the healthier quality of the plants, to produce the new varieties of the plant. But there are some disadvantages also. So see that as this cross pollination, it takes place with the help of different types of agencies, like it may be bats, ants, different types of bacteria, different types of birds, bats, snails, like that. So the type of flower which is going to be produced for the cross pollinated plant, it should be very attractive one. Then it should produce nectar, otherwise the insect cannot sit to collect the nectar. Then the flower, it should be produce the particular type of fragrance. That's why the insects or birds, they are going to attract towards that fragrance. So in this process the plant has to waste the lot of energy to become the flower more attractive, more colored one, to become a flower big one, to produce the nectar, to produce the fragrance. So this is one of the disadvantage of cross pollination. Then if we consider the amount of pollen grains, or if we consider the wastage of pollen grains, so as compared to self pollination, in self pollination there is no wastage of pollen grains, but when we consider the cross pollination, so see that as this takes place in various types of agencies, that's why there is a chance or huge number of loss of pollen grains can be takes place. So this is the second most important disadvantage of cross pollination. So moving towards next, we are going to see what are the contributions to achieve the self pollination, as like we have see it for self pollination. So see that whatever the plants which we are going to observe surrounding to us, so in most of that plants they are going to carry out the cross pollination. So all the number of unisexual flowers, or if we consider the bisexual flowers also, so in them also the natural cross pollination can take place. So see that the first contributes to achieve this cross pollination is that your flower, it should be unisexual one, because if the flower is bisexual, then there is most probably self pollination can take place. But the flower is unisexual, and in that unisexual flower, maybe it is a male flower or a female flower, but the flower should be unisexual one. So at that time there is a chance of cross pollination. And if we consider the types of plants depending upon their sexuality, so there are monoecious plants and dioecious plants. So in monoecious plants, the male and female flowers, they can born on the same plants, like maize, or if we say the members of family Cucurbitaceae. So here the plants are monoecious one. And if we consider the second category of the plants depending upon their sexuality, so that is the second category is of dioecious plants. So dioecious plants means so whenever the male and female flowers, they born on the different plant. For example, carica papaya. This is the well-known example of dioecious plant. So the most important condition to achieve the cross pollination, that is the flower should be unisexual. Now moving towards next, the second condition to achieve the cross pollination is a dichogamy. So what is mean by dichogamy? So dichogamy means, you know that for the process of pollination, both androecium, or you can say the pollen grains and stigma, it should be mature. But what is dichogamy? Dichogamy means there is a difference in maturity period of androecium and gynoecium, or you can say the pollen grains and stigma. So this we called as an dichogamy. So this is the second most important condition to achieve the cross pollination. So this dichogamy is going to divide into two types, that is protandry and second one is protogyny. So pro means beginning or earlier. Okay. So protandry means what? Whenever the androecium, or you can say the pollen grains mature earlier than the gynoecium. So this process we called it as an protandry, in which androecium get mature first. Here are some examples of the plants which are going to show protandry, that is Helianthus anus, then Coriandrum, Jasminum. So these species they show presence of protandry. Then second one, that is the protogyny. So what is protogyny? Exactly opposite to protandry. So protogyny means what? Whenever the gynoecium matures first than the androecium. So that process we called it as an protogyny, and it is observed in the plants like rose, tobacco, various types of cruciferaceae family members. So this is the next important condition to achieve the cross pollination. Then the next condition, that is heterostyle. So the name itself indicates what is the condition. Hetero means different and style means it is the style of flower. So heterostyle, it shows the presence of two types. Two types of flowers, in which the first one is pin-eyed and second one we called it as an thuramide. So just see here what is the difference in between pin-eyed and thuramide. So if you observe here, see this one, this is the flower, or you can say this is the LS of flower, which shows the presence of long style. Okay, and the style, it is present, or you can say the stigma, it is present just at the apex or upper side of the flower. But if you consider here the position of anther, so here the anthers are present at the middle side. So if the condition of flower is that like that, then here the self pollination is avoided. The pollen grains from the base, they cannot transfer towards the apical stigma, or the stigma which is present at the apex. That's why there is a chance of cross pollination even though the flower is bisexual. Then see here the second condition, in which what happens, see here, here the style is short. Okay, that's why the stigma is present at the base. But if you observe the position of anthers, so here the anthers, they are present at the apical portions. So here also, even though the flower is bisexual, the pollen grains, they cannot fall on the stigma which is present at the base. That's why here is also the chance of cross pollination and the self pollination is avoided here. So this condition we called it as an heterostyle. Then the next condition, that is the Harakogami. So here in this Harakogami, even though there are some conditions which can favor the self pollination, so in that flowers also the cross pollination can take place. So just see here, the self pollination is going to avoid some sorts of barrier. The male and female sex organs, they lie at some distance from each other. That's why the self pollination is avoided one and cross pollination can take place. In some of the flowers, the corolla has the peculiar forms, and that corolla acts as a barrier for the self pollination. For example, Aristolochia, it is one of the important example which can shows the here the corolla acts as a barrier for the self pollination. So in the Aristolochia, the cross pollination can take place. Then you know the calotropis, you have seen the flowers of calotropis. So in that what happened, the pollens get come together to form the pollinia. Okay, and that pollinia they get carried with the help of insects. Okay, so in this flower also there is a chance of cross pollination. So there are some examples, even though the flowers they are able to carry out the self pollination, but then also due to some barriers the cross pollination can take place. Then the next important condition, that's why the cross pollination can take place, that is the self sterility or incompactability. So what is self sterility or self incompactability? So it means the anthers are unable to fertilize its own stigma. Okay, if we consider a single flower, or you can say the bisexual flower, and whenever the anthers of the same flower they fall on the same stigma, then there is no fertilization. But when that same anthers they are falling on another stigma of another plant, then the fertilization can take place. So this act or this concept, we called it as an self sterility or self incompactability. So in this process or in this situation also there is a chance of cross pollination. There is no self pollination can take place. So these are the contrivances to achieve the cross pollination. If you like this video, please like, share and subscribe my channel. Thank you.